Hello to viewers, so we'll be doing some session review for, well, as visible for the 1st of February session, and this will be part 1 of the session review. I think it was around 2-hour session, so we will probably make like 4 parts in total. But yeah, let's start with the session. So we have 4 tables visible here. I will be using 2x speed on the VLC player, so we'll get situations a bit faster. On the bottom left we have the €25 MTT and 10 some SNGs. I think this was fairly interesting session overall. Some interesting spots, so let's see what comes up. Okay. So standard open, well, decent open with the ace-3. And usually I would prefer to c-bet the 10-5-3, it's not going to hit small blind that easily, so you can usually get like some Broadway type hands to potentially fold some a-highs stuff with some equity. I went with the small c, but the heart is pretty crappy, because now if he was having the flush draw, obviously has the flush now, and yeah, when he checks, I think we could actually put on at half x speed. When he checks, I didn't really see point in betting. We are still beating some hands, and not sure if we really can get that many better hands to fold if we try to go for bet check bet line. Maybe that 2x speed is a bit, at least if we have some action going on, some boring situations, we can then h6 top right would be fine hand, but we get the shove, so too expensive. Against that open I would have defended. And king 10, pretty standard to fold. On the MTT, I wouldn't mind open raising. We do raise. I mean, these small suited connectors are fine, especially in like 5-handed game. And usually would be c, but in that flop we have the Gutsut, but it's monotone board, so kind of a not much of a hand though. Like if it had been like rainbow or with the flush draw, I'd like try to use that hand as second barrel, at least maybe third barrel, but I think the monotone flop it's a bit more questionable in general. I just went with check, and well, we are going to lose most of the time. Here. And bottom right, it seems like we open raised 5-3. Yeah, it's fine. You don't have a priest that will laser aggro behind. Seems like the top right and got into bubble pretty quickly. Just checking the king high, yeah. Nothing to do here. Should I check? I would usually limp as we do here. And he raises 4BB, so yeah, I'm just folding against 3BB. I think we could maybe call, but at the bottom left, probably going to limp as default, and bottom right we have to defend B9 suited. And bottom left, the idea is to call against, well, probably up to 4BB raise. If he goes bigger than that, then I'm probably folding, but it's been checked. We are definitely betting the open ender, and bottom right, I'm usually flattened here. I mean, raising is fine. It's just kind of a questionable if we 3-bet like 360 or a bit over 300, that if he shoves, I suppose we have to call then. It would be kind of a disaster to call and then raise and then fold 1 overcard, backdoor, open ender and backdoor flush draw, so. But yeah, I definitely don't mind just flatting it here. And on the bottom right, again, you can really go either way. But it's kind of nice to have some of these very nutty hands. Like if we have 10-8 here, we would be way more inclined to protect it by raising. But by calling this type of straight, some portion of the time we have then very kind of a surprising hand. Of course, the downside is that if the villain has like Jack 10 here, we just call and the river is 9, it can kill the action completely, so. Kind of okay both way. Bottom left, it's really weird sizing from the villain to just ship it here, but we obviously have the full set, so. And top right, very standard. Open and see, but we just called on the bottom right, and on the river, obviously we want to bet with the nuts. The question is what is the sizing we want to use, and basically what you want to think about in these spots is that if the villain has like Jack X or better, I think we can get max value by just shipping it. I mean, we could have like King Queen here. Might decide to shove. We could have some, say, hard draw combos we floated on the flop, and so or we might try to maybe turn some sort of 8-9 into bluff sometimes. Well, probably not often, but yeah, the main question is that they did bet flop bet turn, so by shoving we might lose some value against like some second pairs, but I pretty much like ripping it in here. And we'll then call ace jack. Well, that's pretty standard call, obviously. And we got maximum out of it. But yeah, whatever we raised turn or raised flop, I think there is pretty high chance that the money would have gone in every street against that hand. And pocket 8, top right with 3x, pretty bad flop. You can argue of betting small here, but the problem, in my opinion, is sort of that, well, no better hand is going to fold basically, and some worse hands are going to call, but the issue is then that we are going to be out of position on turn, which we mainly want to tend to check, and we'll then can continue betting if he wants, and we are in a pretty hard spot to continue, so I don't really mind just taking check line and possibly even check fold the flop if he bets decent sized, because we are blocking some straight draws as well. And that's kind of unfortunate board product. I think it would be still fine to just check fold. We have some sort of value. And I'm not sure if we can. I mean, whether we'll then check flop and turn, it's not that likely that he has Jack X or 10x, so if he has the AX, are we getting that to fold with like half pot or 200? So, I don't know. It would be somewhat reasonable bet, but I think I would prefer just check folding. Like we are going to bluff it here, try to get some, yeah, like what we are trying to get the AX to fold. Also, of course, there is like argument that we are making it tougher for the villain to be bluffing by betting ourselves, but if we check first time, he can just be stepping with all sort of stuff, but we have kind of a hard time to be calling with force pair, obviously. at his house, so he probably had like some sort of king or queen club 10, or went for wild bluff 10. But yeah, I mean, we can definitely have some king or queen high flush here. Checking for the showdown value, but planning to check call both streets, but then hitting the flush. So I'm not too worried about being bluffed here, really. It's not much. But yeah, I think we should just check fold properly. And show that king. I mean, we could raise sometimes, but the issue is that it's fairly easily dominated hand overall against the lead calling range. We again definitely have some mediocre decent king X here, not the most playable hand. So I think it is up our right spot. We could sometimes go for the raising these spots. That's something I don't do much. I probably should be. And in here again, when the Willem Ben min bets, I think we could argue about raising. And I mean, we don't have to, like, if we go 200 here and Willem call, we can just check most of the rivers. But we are going to try to get value out of those draws and have some protection. And this is the kind of issue. Of course, when he min bets again, I think we just have to call. Need to be good like 1 out of 8 times. So, and he had 2 pair in the end, so I don't know. Maybe he would be calling anyway if I raised at some point, but at least it would have cost him a bit more to get here. Of course, there are downsides, like if we raise the flop and we'll end 3-bet, well, we probably have to fold at that point, but same for the turn pretty much. And yeah, but yeah, I think like just probably prefer to have like some sort of king 7 or king 8, so that if the board run out happens like this, when we just call, it's not as bad. Top right, we open 2 guys calls. I think we can go either way, but the problem is that the jack is hitting decently for both players, so we have the 8 of spades, so I don't really mind. I'm just checking, and then it goes bet and pick raise, so we have easy fold. And top right went for the 3x open. With that stack size, I would prefer a bit smaller, 2.5 BB. It's kind of bad, I would say. The MTD unfortunately didn't go too far, but I think there was some somewhat interesting spots. So top right, we have 10 high, could be good sometimes, so I'm usually not trying to bluff with that. Just check it to showdown. He bets, we fold. And bottom left, Willem opens pretty small, but 4-10 off, I think we can just lay it down. And top right, we are either raising and get good flops. So the idea here is to see, but we don't really need to go that big because we have the king of club. So we need a bit less protection. If we didn't have the club at all, I think I would prefer to make like at least half pot, but I think in here we can go like 150 or 160 type of. Okay, I went a bit bigger. But yeah, I think that sizing is kind of a bad in a way. That's like if the Willem call here, it's going to be 900, so we create a bit awkward, maybe a bit awkward type of bit over pot size. So I think I would prefer maybe overall to bet like 150 or then go for the half pots or a bit like a little bit bigger and 10. But yeah, my plan is probably to shove here anyway on the turn. This sizing, but he folds. Like the main question is, do you want to make it like 2-street or 3-street action in those situations and choose the sizing based on that. So top right will then limp. We decided to raise this time. You could argue that there is some merit in just checking here, as we have queen high, decent showdown value, but also it's very dry flop, so we definitely don't mind if we get like some random air hand that still has equity fold, so usually I'm just betting my fold range pretty much. And bottom right, I think it was limp pot. We turned to nuts. So I'm probably betting like 100, 120, 150, something like that here. 7 jack, we could have lean from the top right. No, not the greatest river. Usually people are not going to be bluffing here if we check, from my experience, most of the time, so especially 3-way. So I think we could go like somewhat small sizing, because it's not too likely people have 2 pair, especially when we have the queen blocker. Because they would probably play more aggressive most of the time, flop or turn, if they had 2 pair at this point. So I think we want to size it relatively small, like 200, half pot at maximum. Because we are trying to get obviously weaker than the jack to call. Top right, open 9-8, and 3-way. Yeah, we want to see bet here. It's a bit awkward spot if we get raised, so, but it does happen, it seems. Yeah, you don't like this spot much, but at the same time you have some backdoor equity top pair, and it's somewhat trolley board. And maybe small blind doesn't have a huge amount of like over pairs would usually 3, but you could have some ace 9, king 9 type of stuff, but yeah, I think we kind of have to continue here, and I'm just calling usually, because like if the turn is spade, we can pretty happily fold, unless it's 8 of spade, I suppose, and that we have to call, but if it's a spade in general and we lane continues, we can just fold the hand at that point pretty often. Straight draws are, well, somewhat possible, but not very often, not very likely from the small blind in general. What the deuce is practical blank now, it's kind of a less likely that he has sets, for example, that he might just try to set one pre-flop, so I think we just have to go in here. So if we fold here, then is the flop call. I don't think flop call is going to make much merit if we are folding this sort of turn. Well, maybe you could argue that we can turn often enough equity to fold here, but I don't think it's good. But yeah, he has the ace 9, so we are screwed. And we got new table, and right away pocket kings, probably some sort of 3-bet situation, and Villain seems to be donk shoving with 7-5, so that was nice donation. Seems like it was basically possibly the first hand of the game. It's also one reason why you might want to go a bit wider in general when it's like first hand, and people are getting aggro because they might just have God know what. MTT, we open suited ace, very standard top left. I think 3-way our fold equity is not that high, so I might choose to check here. So it's not a bad combo to start betting and go for multiple barrels. possibly some runouts, but seems like we went with the check. And bottom right, Jack 9, easy defend against the min raise. Well, maybe not easy, but reasonable. And top left, if the big blind doesn't raise, our plan is to call turn. Bottom right will then check, so we are going to lead the turn. King is kind of a good card for the villain, so I don't expect him to call just random king high. So it kind of has to be king X with the heart, or maybe ace king. So I think it can be somewhat thin to try to evaluate that, so might be a time for check and evaluate. So the top left we hit the straight. And we'll then bet small. We should be just raising here, I think. Yeah, it's possible he has the flush, but he only have SPR2 basically, so that's just a setup basically, if that's the case. Now there is some argument in calling in a way that we protect our somewhat weak range, but we probably would want to have that heart in our hands to make that line, because then we don't need as much protection. Okay, I went with the call. Well, if we call, then I'm just definitely checking the river as well, and still planning to check Shava. And we'll end us bet outside table. Sure what is the pre-flop accent here, but seems like we see bet and get this crazy action, so it's most likely time to get out of the way quickly with the top pair. And he just called. I think that's pretty nitty one. But yeah, that outside table, flush over flush. Luckily we didn't have two pair, because that would have been luckily harder to get away with that. But yeah, top left, I don't like that line. I mean, if he were deeper, then I don't hate it. Then he's still 3-barreling, with the flush completing, but with those stacks. Way too careful, my opinion. Okay, so bottom right we open, see bet the flop with the open ender. Not too much point in betting the turn. We have some sort of value, can beat some A high, some king 10 type of floats, etc. Now it's not nice if he bets, but he just min bets, so we are definitely snapping that. On the MTT we are defending the shielded connector. Okay, top left we went with the limp, that's fine. We definitely want to have some limp folding range or also here, so as default it's fine to just trap some hands obviously, and he min raises, so yeah, we probably just ship it, and if he folds then he folds. And bottom right, getting action for the aces. Like in general, you want to think so to say sometimes, so that if maybe the bottom goes a bit wider if we don't snap shout here. So I think I would prefer a bit more thinking time here, but at the same time, if there was a lot of action, then yeah, it's reasonable to just act quickly. Bottom left, we have mid pair and some backdoors, but the problem is that two players seems to be interested, so could be kind of close, but with the implied odds, because if we happen to hit the two pair of trips, We probably get value out of that, but the problem is that when we turn some equity, like let's say the spade comes and we face sizable bet, then that's not a nice spot, so I don't really mind folding like that turn. We checked here if we call. Now is this guy, well, I guess that sizing we could have easy call, but yeah, that would have been pretty nice outcome, possibly. I'm not sure. Maybe you could argue of calling here, but yeah, definitely without no backdoor flush draw I would be folding, but maybe with that we should have. But I think it's pretty close spot with, because it's questionable if we have any real showdown value with the 6 when 2 people show interest on the flop. Okay, bottom right we went with the, I think, clean play. Go back. Yeah, we just, okay. This is the usual misread situation, so the villain is actually raising. There is no small blind. Okay, so we called. And top right we went for light 3-bet. I mean, this is one of the most common spots to be 3-betting button versus cut of putting the villain into tough situation out of position, and we don't need to use as big sizing. But then we get the small blind cold calling, which theory-wise should pretty much never happen. But I think on that flop we could bet like 200 and just try to. Because when the villain calls, then he's most likely going to be a recreational player. And he might have stuff that really shouldn't be here, so I think with bet like 200 we can take the pot down often enough. We went a bit bigger, but I think 200 is also just going to do the job. And bottom right we 3x open raise, that's fine. Putting some pressure on the mid stack in the bubble. Went with the check with the middle pair, some backdoors, he min bets, so easy call. Top left, good flop for the villain on the big blind, so we are just checking the king height here. And well, top right, not that much action. I could actually check that with golden resources. I think I called here, but I think it might be somewhat close situation overall. And he's a bit smaller stacked than that. Obviously we would be snapping against the bottom, but well, actually I think we should be folding against the small blind. At least if we think he's somewhat decent opponent, because he should have pretty tight range to ISO shove 50 BB, and we only have ace king off, so. Well, we open 2.5 BB, I'm not going to put the 3, but it's going to be a shove. Yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty much fold situation, but be that we were optimistic and called. So the holder resources would make, let's use the tool. By the way, any feedback? Is it easy to follow those tables or not? Anyway, bottom would be showing 13% here. It is. Well, it's actually kind of fast to have that tool. But we don't see the matrix 10. Yeah, it's a bit like shoving most pocket pairs. Might be somewhat reasonable, maybe. Here is the problem that the small blind either shoving should have very tight range. And 10 against that range, ace king off is pretty clearly minus EV. Ace king suited would be kind of close, so he should probably be folding here, but let's see what we actually do. And back to, oh, not the splash screen, but wall screen. Oh, okay, we pretty much snapped that. Okay, so 9 jack is definitely outside of the range we assumed here for the bottom. Now, did we have a read? That's the good possibility. That's a different question. But so if we edit this guy's range to have jack 9 off, now that would be at that point. So that's change and keep the small blind range same. It would still be somewhat minus EV. Well, actually quite a lot minus EV. Now the ace king for the small blind make a lot of sense. It seems like we are splitting it. Happy ending. Probably bad play though. I mean, it depends a lot. Like if the small blind is 10 eyes are raising actually with like ace jack, can actually widen that. Let's see. His eyes are raising. It's wider like that. Then it does become somewhat plus EV. So yeah. But we should in general assume pretty tight range without any specific read. So I think overall, like I don't hate the ace king call, but a bit questionable. Might be good to fold the offsuit and call the suited. Overall, yeah, I was checking that MTD spot, wondering if I should have played it different. But yeah, don't be result oriented. That's, you happen to hit the backdoor flush draw. It's still going to be pretty low frequency thing. But yeah, it might be that I made a mistake here flop. I'm not sure about that. Okay, outside stable it seems like we have min raised and there's min 3-bet and cold call, so I mean with my stack I don't really mind shoving. It might be that this guy has like the nuts here, but at the same time these min 3-bet guys they can do some weird stuff. Well, he has queens, seems like we sucked out here. Bottom right, it was limp, but we could lead here on this flop sometimes. Now the queen 4 is kind of interesting that we do have some showdown value. But I think with the monster draw, I prefer just semi-bluffing here. Like 150, 200. Something like that. And top right, we are just going for the showdown value. And bottom right, it's kind of a disconnected, but still like somewhat connected, so one of those flops which I don't mind really checking behind either. And well, when you hit the set on the turn, it's a bit happier situation. So the top right, I believe limp Limp called him in raised. We only have guts, so I just folded that. And bottom right, just going to check to showdown if possible. And top right, the queen 10 hits a small blind range quite easily usually, so probably just check behind. Possibly then go for delayed c-bet sometimes if he checks, but on the bottom right got shot overcard for c-bet. I think I will, let's see, 15 minutes through. I will try to make the half hour of this recording on the first part. So bottom right will land 3x, we have to defend that hand and very crappy flop. I'm just going to be in check fold mode on the river, so land checking twice. I think this is spot where we could go for like 200, 300 value, but attempt. The thing is that I actually like that more than check calling, because usually people are not going to take bluffing lines with this type of, especially this type of flop with air, check, check, bet. So if he goes for that line, he probably has like some sort of pocket pair or queen x, maybe some ax sometimes. So I think we either check fold or go for the thin value bet here. Well, okay, he bets 100, so might be that my plan was to check fold, but probably not against that sizing when we need to be good 1 out of 8 time. But yeah, might be that we are not good even that. Okay, he had it. Flopped full house. That's enough. Well, top right we have second pair, but we lane's just min betting, so have to stick around. And bottom right, raising the limper. We actually win with the ace-5. Convenient, very passive line by the misdrawn with the monster draw. And if he just raised the flop, we would probably win it. And top left will land shoving like 20, almost 25 BBs. Not a big fan of that because the risk reward is just not here. I mean, it's plus EV, but probably better to be like limped 3-bet shoving or so on. And bottom right, we only have the gut shot, so might be that we go for the. And I don't expect much fold equity. Much fold equity here. And that's flop structure. Top left going to check call with the ace and backdoor. Top right, open, both of them call. If it comes check to me, I think I would like to see a bet, but if they lead, then yeah, I think we are just folding when they lead. Well, I don't hate calling, maybe. Raising is kind of tricky because, like what we are representing, Jack 8, pocket jacks. Well, we could have some hands, maybe 9-10. But yeah, it's one of those hands that we could call here. If this plus complete, we could try to represent it. If the 10 hits, it's almost, well, it's guaranteed that we are good. Unless it's 10 of spades, then we might not be, but. And the king might be often also good, so. think I would prefer C to call it here. I don't know if raising that might be plausible as well. But looks like we folded top left. I mean, turn is pretty decent, and we have no need to be betting at any point. Queens top left. Well, bottom right, easy defend. Top right, we either limp or raise. Like we are raising this time. And pocket queens, we are 22 PB deep. We can definitely go for small 3-bet. And that's pretty good flop. Most likely betting something like 400. Bottom right, sure how it went, but considering we are leading now, well, okay, so he mid-raised. Mid-raised here, yeah, standard step on the turn 10. Definitely want some protection here. And bottom right, we are going to 3-bet. Good amount of turns that we are then happy to barrel. And yeah, some crap put on pair on the top right. Probably just checking on the turn, yeah. At top left, this Cherben guy, I think he was been playing earlier against Ethnic. I think he was somewhat recreational player. So yeah, this is huge 3-bet obviously. I mean, if you are 100 BB deep or something, then that's like a standard sizing, maybe even small sizing. But when you are playing 30 BB poker, using almost 4x 3-bet is enormous, especially without antis. So yeah, we just have to fold here. I mean, if we want to continue, we should be shoving, but that's I would not advise that. But yeah, calling is the worst option. Bottom right, I think this guy has been somewhat passive. We also want to have a decent amount of AX, and shooter definitely is kind of a nice one. Nice one to just call, and we basically have to call it here. In folding, even though against passive guy betting big here, I'm not like super thrilled about the situation, but folding is just too weak, so I think we are just going to call. And on that turn, we just have to go with it, hope that we are good, and if not, we have some decent equity. I mean, most of the time, we are going to still have like 9 spades, then probably 2 pair and trip out, so 14 out. So that is going to give us like close to 30% equity, and we basically need 33%. So we definitely can't fold. He can sometimes be ahead, obviously, but when it's passive guy playing like this, he probably has the queen or better. It's queen, we don't get here. Also, he blocked our ace out. Top right, open raising. So on the bottom right, if the river was like 4 of hearts, I think we could even argue folding. Not as a standard line, so I think, but against passive type of opponent. And top right, we went for the raise, that's fine. Top left, I think it has been limped to river and he steps. Problem is that we still have the bottom behind also, and we only have bottom pair, no flush plugger. We're probably folding it here. And bottom right, we run into bigger ace right away. Well, standard shove. That was kind of unfortunate. Top left, I don't really want to shove almost 30 BB deep with the big blind. Especially if he might be making 2 wide calls, so I just... Oh, okay, we went for the shove. Yeah, I'm not... We could actually check that. I have a feeling I don't really like that. I mean, theory-wise, Villain should be folding, like, basically. Calling range is probably like 9s plus or 10s plus, but... But... That's against solid player, basically. I mean, we don't hate if he calls with ace king or ace queen, but we definitely don't really want to be flipping either. So... Let's see if we go have the shoving range here. So Nash wise, okay, so actually Nash is calling ace king suited as well. He's actually folding pocket tens, so... But even with that assumption, it's going to be like... Let's use this one, this screen here. I think it's good for this. A little bit easier to see those small numbers, so pocket fives would be like 0.14. EV, assuming these guys are calling. I mean, small blind could be reasonable. Big blind, what if he's actually calling like that sort of range? Then it's going to be break even, so... Yeah, I think I would prefer min raise. We have to call against the small blind basically, but... Probably the reason why I went with the shove was the fact that this guy was 3-betting earlier, but... Might that be, I'm not really a big fan of that. So top right, we defend... Oh, actually it was limp, but I wouldn't mind leading here. So we have king high card, so we have some showdown value. I probably just call here. I mean, the problem for raising is that then here is flush draw as well. It's kind of a loose to be stacking off. I probably just call that. I wouldn't hate that leading option either though. Okay, top left we shove. I don't mind this if I think this guy had been limping earlier, but this time we run into the nuts, so that's not ideal. And top right I checked because of this possible showdown value. And the flush has missed as well, so... And kind of questionable if we get like 6-6 or better to fold at least. But yeah, it's pretty much the bottom of our range. We don't block the diamonds, so I think we should bluff the river probably. It's kind of hard to have much of a weaker holding overall. And top left, we can definitely shove all against passive opponents. Or in general, I don't really mind limping, but okay, we seem to have aggression mode on here. MTT seems like we open raised somewhat loose open, I would say, but reasonable, and I think we have been pretty tight here, so it makes it a bit better. Bottom right, I was thinking about shoving, but decided just complete. I don't really mind either way. And top right, we lane limped, went for the small c-bet. Calls, usually I'm not barreling here because if he has the ace, he's not folding, most likely, so... It's going to check fold. Could win sometimes if it goes to showdown. And bottom right, not sure how that went. Okay, we lead out. Yeah, it was the limp pot. We lead out. Out the flop, which is definitely fine, and then yeah, we are probably betting like 550 or something. 600 on the turn, and he snap shoves, so we snap call. And bottom left, well, 3-way on that flop. I'm not necessarily overly worried about the big blind hitting tier. Of course, he can have some pocket pairs and flush draws, but I think the bigger issue is the big blind range. And obviously, well, we can't have much worse overall. From our range, I mean, Queen of the Diamond, but that's not much overall. And we raise again top right, see betting that. Up. Well, we got off his betting, and now the big blind raise, and we snap fold. And top left, loose open, but yeah, it's bubble. Bubble and big stack, so I don't really mind it. Now the big blind is 3-betting again, so might be that he has just the hot deck, but seems a bit of a guy that is ready to possibly go a bit wider. Okay, top left we have the gutshot, no showdown value most likely, so yeah, I like the step tier. We don't need to go that, like half pot is okay, as we did basically. I mean, it's rainbow flops, so I don't necessarily even mind a bit smaller. We might want to value bet decently wide here, like maybe even like some 5x type of hand for protection. So it would be a decent spot to just bet like 200. And bottom left, well, easy shove if it's folded to me. And yeah, top left, standard shove. Nicely set up though. And bottom right, we probably just ship it. And bottom left, that call was just absurd. I mean, we shove 20 BBs. He calls with 10 jack off. So. And top right, we have a combo draw, so to say, but yeah. Just get away from here. And we rebuy to MTT, top left. Usually see betting small, that flop is not going to hit the lane. And top right, probably open shoving. And top left against the 4BB, we can't really do anything. Now we are limping queen jack. I'll probably see betting that flop. It's still AI, which is kind of a good. But he snaps and flush completes. He can definitely have a good amount of flush draws here, so I'm just giving up it. And bottom left, I think we are obviously snapping against the small blind. Yeah, top left will then calls. I think we just have to give up that hand. So on the river when he checks quickly. I mean, we don't block the diamond, which we lane could have. We only have 7 high, so I think we could bet the river like 700 or 8, something like that. I don't think we want to go huge because It's like somewhat unlikely. I mean, if we want to have balance, of course we can just go bigger with the bluff against recreational player, but let's see. Okay, we went somewhat big here. Yeah, well, like we can basically go pretty big with the Jack X, I suppose. Ultra 9X. Limp top right, we see that, and well, let's see. Will we barrel? I don't hate it. The question is how much fold equity we have, so. And should we be ready to triple barrel if we bet? I think if we bet, we should probably fire decent amount of rivers as well. Okay, we go for it. Oh, the 9 sucked, so 9 is pretty garbage card. Might be that my plan was to triple barrel here and he wins with the 8 high. Okay, I was thinking about shoving ace-9 but decided to limp. And the 5 is again like, well, it's better than the diamond, but it's pretty crappy cards to barrel in general. And then the diamond gets here, so we really hate that board run out. Let's have to check and see if we have possibly the best hand. Bottom right, yeah, it was limp pot, we checked the flop. All the turn, obviously with the combo draw. I mean, no need to go crazy on the turn because we only have 10 high flush draw as well, so we don't really want to bloat the pot. And when he checks, we are definitely betting the river. I think like half pot up to 400 be fine. In check, easy shove, let's see, 25 minutes in of the recording. 5 minutes more and okay, top right. Yeah, I don't mind 3-bet. Question is, do we want to shove or 3-bet small? I mean, it mainly depends on the player. If we think that Villain is not going to have basically liked 4-bets, which I don't think this guy is that likely, so I don't really mind just 3-bet folding. And if he calls King 10, we'll be playing pretty nicely post-flop, so. I mean, the sort of problem with the shove is that we are still going to risk close to 30 BBs for that. But yeah, calling is also option, but then the problem is sort of that if we call big blind shove, probably be a call if the button folds because of the pot odds at that point. Yeah, seems like I'm thinking about it. And we went with the small 3-bet in the end. Bottom left MTT, I think we should defend the 9-5 suited even though the sizing is at close to 2.5 BB. Close decision here, decided to defend and we get one crappy flop, so. And top right, I think we went with the c-bet. And we c-bet small, we land call. And if they will land check the river, I think we could go for the value, but there is a bit of a danger that sometimes he might have the ace, but not often, but he could sometimes have the bigger king, so I don't mind like going 400 or something like that. Or 80, we got a bit more greedy. Top left, we can definitely shove. That's my default line, but this guy has been somewhat passive, I think, so we could limp also. Line we shove. And bottom right, this guy 2.5x. I decided to just flat with the aces. which is definitely fine. And top left with the acro big blind, we are just shipping it, and bottom right, when the will name pot, we just raise, and it's probably not folding like ever. Close to ever. And top left calling with suited jack. Was going to shove king 10 suited, but then probably thought that the villains are somewhat passive, so mean raising could have better EV. And outside table action, really weird looking 2x bot Charlotte here. Whatever the pre-hop action was, he had a tiny bit better on the flop. Oh, we flopped trips, so it's time to bet most of the time. I mean, occasionally we can check, but when we have acro image and it's bubble, we want to be putting pressure, then definitely like 90+% of time just use the trips as acro line. Not the greatest turn, but I think we are still way too often ahead and we want protection. That's kind of a blank river. He could sometimes have the ace, but I don't think that's very often the case. Considering we bet twice, of course he could have like some ace 8, ace 7, ace 6. Against those we could potentially get the shove in, but I think with bit smaller sizing we could also get like 7x, maybe even 6x. Sometimes to call. So I don't know, maybe some sort of 700 would be my default sizing. And he actually had ace deuce, which is pretty loose. I mean, I would understand it if the turn was like 4 or something like that it doesn't complete the draws, but now we can have 9x, we might have some 7x valuable in the turn. We could have the straight 6x, we would probably check behind, but I mean, I think that's pretty optimistic. Optimistic one. And yeah, top right against the mid stack, we are just shoving or playing any two basically. And bottom right, villain seems to be pretty aggro in heads up. So the queen 10 suited against aggro guy, we are not folding pre-flop most likely. Only good question is, do we limp call or in-raise call? I definitely don't mind limping, but I think we should be just calling here. We can't be folding this good of a hand against die that is seems to be pushing us around all the time, so have to take our chances here in my opinion. Okay, top right we seem to go for the limp step attempt, so the idea is to limp pre-flop and try to create more fold equity post-flop than by raising. So then we should probably call any two on the I raise. And bottom right, I think 5. Roughly 5 PV deep, 9-7 off. Well, in the NAS 9-7 off is exactly 5 PV, so I don't hate it. MTT, suited hand, we see a bit smallish. Okay, let's go a bit longer. Top left, easy shove. Like we are winning that flip. And top right, I don't actually. I think we kind of should shove that, but well, I don't know. There is some merit in just trying to keep the short stack alive. I mean, if we shove and he double up, it's not a bad thing overall. Then we have a bit more fold equity on the bottom shoves against him also, but yeah. So bottom left, I see that we lane call. The 9 is of course giving us equity, but if we bet here and we lane shove, we are definitely not happy about it. We have to call, so I think as default I kind of prefer checking. If you are against guy that you think that he could be like check shoving stuff, like some sort of pair and straight draw, then I don't mind betting either, but the key point I think is that if we bet, we can't be folding with the flush draw as well. We check behind, 7 is would be sort of okay. If he checks, we are going to go for value bet, I think something like half pot. And bit below, I think we could go for the half pot here. It's enough 8x 9x to call. That's what we are aiming for. Of course, if we get check raised here, it's one of those kind of a nasty spots. I could see myself probably going kind of both ways. Probably as default folding too. And he called with the 8. And bottom right, with 3 bets, definitely. Well, we could check here as well, actually. Aces with the hearts would be a fine combo. Fine combo to check sometimes. So the 6-4 on the top right, I folded short stack, and this 7-4 we are going to shove. I think nice-wise this is probably a bit too wide with the 7-4. I think we could end here after checking this, but it's also a bit over 70 minutes recording this point, so like the thing is that NAS-wise the small blind should be calling pretty wide, so well, let's see. I don't think it's in the NAS any 2 spots, but I might be wrong. Okay, it's any 2. I was wrong here. Let's see how clearly any 2 is. Is it? It's pretty marginal with this like bottom hand. And in the small blind shoes here, I would personally call wider than this anyway. Because the thing is that you don't have much of fold equity when you shove this sort of stack in general. And you are usually getting the aggression decent amount, so quite often personally I'm kind of ready to take a bit of minus EV call as a gamble, basically, to get back to a bit more playable situation. Like if we call small blind shoes something like that, then it start to be like break even with the worst hands. This is also one of those spots that when the small blind calls and the big blind can overcall pretty wide, but that's also often something that people don't do this wide, which benefit us basically. But let's see what happens in this one. So we shout calls king 8 suited. I definitely like that call. See what's, yeah, it's not in the nice range against any 2 range, but I personally like it. It's very close as well. I think that call is good. We can also, this is actually spots where we can try to implement or bring up the reason why I would call. Let's put the FGS to, well, zooms the, let's put the FGS to 3. So it takes some future hands into account. So now the small blind is actually calling 30.7%. Yeah, so definitely a spot where small blind wants to try and gamble a bit. Though you can argue that if we are actually going to fold small blind more often, then we should, like, vacuum wise attempt to keep the bubble away alive, and it's definitely good for the sword stack, and that would tighten his range, but you rarely have a read about things like that in the small blind shoes anyway. But yeah, I think this is okay spot to end this part 1. We will then do probably three more parts. Any feedback? Is it good that I have this full screen? Should I make it maybe like this zoom and make the video smaller? Like, let's see how it would look like if I make it like this. I don't know, is it any different really? So this is the zoom I usually use when I record my four tables. I don't think it's really any different, probably. Well, anyway, any feedback is welcome, and opinions on the hands, obviously. Thanks for watching, bye for now.